This is the second video for your first project. Definitely want to watch the one that preceded this to get an idea of what you'll be doing. I'm going to go through all of the steps throughout project one. The first couple are going to take me quite a while to explain, so just keep in mind that it will start to pick up pace-wise, but I want to explain the basics of digital animation as we go. The project, you'll probably figure out as you get going, will start to follow in order the things that are here in the properties panel, especially when you're working with text. So that'll give you a big hint where to find things if you're first trying to do it on your own, which I highly recommend. Try to copy what I have posted in the last video without my help, and then as you run into problems, come through, watch this video. Keep in mind that I do have a Word document posted that'll give you the content that you need for a lot of the text, so you don't have to type things in from scratch. So let's get going. Right here is the first part that I want you to do, and I'll go back and start this from scratch, but I want you to get an idea what this will look like as you finish this section of it. So what you're going to do is just leave a second that says the first bit here, things I can animate using only Edge, then 1 second of nothingness, and then starts the actual content. And by the time you finish this, you should have somewhere about 1:30 worth of content here before it stops at the last frame. Then you will go back and you will extend the video, the animation, and you will add the beginning content. So as you can see here, you're going to end up with quite a few different automatically created layers, but part of the assignment is that you will name these layers so that later as you go through you'll be able to pinpoint a specific part of it. So let's get started. Here's what you'll do to go, and I'm going to go through this fast because the first video already covered this, but you just go File, New, create a new document, go back, look at the handout constantly as you're doing work. For me, the first thing you'll see on that handout is what the stage size should be, and that is 800 pixels wide by 540 tall. So I'll punch those numbers in here for the stage. And remember, if you're not seeing the stage, it could be because you're clicked on an object over here that maybe you've already drawn ahead of me. But otherwise, with nothing selected, the stage properties show. In my video, I had a light blue color for the background of the stage, so let's go ahead and do that. Double click in the color here. First, we'll slide the hue slider into the blue range, and then we'll use the actual picker over here to select a color that's fairly low in saturation and more on the high side as far as brightness goes. Now you don't have to do this right now, but I think it's worth pointing out in here that you can build a palette as you go in here just simply by clicking this little plus sign, so it puts that color in here. So for example, if you thought that down the road you're going to need a darker blue version, then you may as well mix it while you have the original hue setting here. So let's say if you wanted something darker, you could just slide this value down here and it'll give you a darker version of that color. You hit the plus sign and that's what it'll put in there. Now notice it changed the stage to that color, so I'm just going to go back over here, click on that one to bring up that color, hit enter or return, and there we go. We have our stage set up. Now's a good time to go ahead and save our project, which was covered in detail in the first movie. And I would get in the habit of just saving the work that you're going to turn into me with your last name first, an underscore, your first name, an underscore, and then a description. So a good description here would be just Edge. Notice I have save in a folder checked. Go ahead for now and put this on my desktop. Click save, and I can tell that that's been done by the fact that it's named right there. As of right now, the feature that usually works in most Adobe programs where you double click on the hand tool and it brings the stage into the most convenient size to use isn't working in this program yet. So what I do if I'm not sure of where the edges of my stage is, I'll go Command minus until it backs down, and I mean you can even take that to the extreme if you want, Command minus, and then I take the zoom tool and I draw a marquee that's just bigger than the stage. So I click and drag from the top left to the bottom right, release the mouse, and then it pops into view from there. A lot of what we're animating in this first project is text, so let's go up to the text tool and let me just show you a couple basic things about the text tool. First thing is when you click with it, it's a little bit like Illustrator if you're familiar with it, in that if you just click and start typing, you can go on and on forever until you hit the return key, and then that'll give you another line of type. So that's okay if you just want to put in a single line of type, but usually if you want type contained in a box, especially a paragraph, it makes more sense to use the other technique, which is dragging out a box with the text tool. So first let me delete this, and I can go to my Word doc, copy this if I want, Command C, it's now on the clipboard. So now I'll do the drag method with the text tool. So text tool selected, click and drag from here over to here, release the mouse, and then I can start typing in there. I can Command V to paste what I copied in there. So here I gotta just click and drag, get rid of the duplicate word there. And then whenever you make an adjustment to the text, just make sure you have it highlighted with the text tool. So then, for example, we can come over here and choose a size that we want. So I can put in 50. We also need to pay attention to what font we're using for consistency's sake. Now, just a quick lesson on web design in general. You need to pick, instead of just a font stack. So for example, I'm going to pick a font called Verdana, which is very readable on the web. But notice I'm not just picking Verdana. What I'm saying is that if someone's going to be watching my animation on a website, they may not have Verdana. Pretty unlikely these days, but if they don't, then I'm saying we'll use a font that looks very similar to it named Geneva. And then if you don't have that font either, then instead of just going, maybe generic to Times New Roman, which looks nothing like this, then at least pick a sans serif font, because Times New Roman is a serif font, has those little embellishments on it. So that's what a font stack is. Then we pick the size that we want, and maybe we want to go kind of big here because this is the title, which keep in mind, it's just a placeholder for now because we're going to spend more time on this after we complete the first part. I can align it center. I can go back up and blow up the size even more. If I want more space between the lines of type, I can adjust this value here, which I have to get at by dropping this down, and that's this animal here, which is in web design is called the line height. So what I ended up here with was put the cursor back in there so you can see it. Sometimes a little trick too is you just double click with the regular selection tool. You don't even have to go to the text tool, and it becomes the text tool just by you clicking enough times in there. And then you can do Command A to select everything that's in there. So you can see here's what I ended up with was the Verdana font stack. 90 pixels for the font size and 100 pixels for the line height, and then of course center aligned text. All right, so that is just our placeholder for now. We want that to last for 1 second, then to disappear. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this box, not the text anymore, just like a selection of the box. You notice that the text is no longer highlighted, and we have all the properties for the text. And to make that even more clear, what I'm going to do is rename this over here, and I'll call this something like placeholder title. Hit return. It's named the layer here, and then you can tell that's what we're working on right here. may have misspelled that, but that's good for now. Okay, so how do we make that show up and disappear? Well, whenever we initially draw something in Edge Animate, it lists over here as the display style is always on. Sometimes that's okay, but for us in this project, we want to switch our things to being on, and then we'll switch them to being off at a certain point. So we're going to go out to 1 second right now. We're going to hit this little triangle here, which places a keyframe over here, and more on those in just a second, and then we're going to change that to off. So what's happening now is if we scrub the playhead, this will be on for 1 second and then off. Now notice there's no transition, so it's not fading out or anything. It's just when we play this, it'll be on for 1 second, then off for 1 second. We want to see nothing for 1 second. So what we're going to do is move our playhead over here to frame number 2, and now we're going to do our first animation in here, which is things that, or I can animate the opacity. Going to grab the text tool, click with it, either type this out or paste it, come up with a size and a style for it. Now here, you know, we're designing something, so we want to be consistent. We want to come up with a size for our average little blurbs. There's going to be a lot of these like one-liners. So I found that if you're using Verdana, 50 pixel on the point size is pretty good. And then I'm going to go here, grab the selection tool, move this into what I consider to be a pretty decent place here. And then just to help me for consistency's sake, in the future when I have another one of these come up, I'm going to come up here, put my cursor in this ruler up here, click, drag. What I'm doing is bringing out a guide, and then I can use that to place other one-liners like this in the future for nice consistency. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to animate this so that it comes in, we can't see it, it has 0 opacity and animates to 100% opacity. So what we're going to do is select this, not the individual text elements, but the box itself. We're going to go over to this right here, which is the opacity. We're going to click on the triangle next to it, which places this keyframe. Then we're going to go over 1 second later. We're going to place another keyframe. Now both keyframes have the opacity at 100%. We'll go back, and this is important that the playhead is over the top of the keyframe that you're addressing. And we're going to be doing all of these with, or at least for now, with only auto transition on. So I'm going to turn this guy off, and then with my playhead over the top of this keyframe, I'm going to go back to that opacity, and I'm going to punch in 0 opacity. Now because I had this turned on, it automatically puts that transition in there for me. So it's going from 0 to 100% opacity. Now here's a key thing. Sorry to use the word key, but it's quite appropriate in this case. These are called key frames. If you think back to traditional animation before digital animation, what would happen is the important animators would get to draw the keyframes. So in this case, from nothingness to full opacity. The tweeners, as they called them, would have to make the in-between frames. So you would have anywhere from, in this 1 second, 12 to 24 to 30 frames that would vary in opacity. So that'd be a very tedious job. Here we did that in a very short time. Now if you follow the video, you'll see what happens is that this stays the same, stays fully opaque for 1 second. So I'm going to go from 3 to 4, going to place another keyframe there, and oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong one, so let me go Command Z. I need to click this right here. Places another one. It's 100% as well, so that's why you don't see this, you know, yours